Hello. While it's still morning. Good morning. My name is Betty Giles, and I am here to introduce our speakers. And you are at the Rebuild Workshop entitled Strategic Consideration, Connecting Churches with Their Communities, co-presented by the Reverend Dr. Fredrick Johnson and Marie Moy. Just a little bit about Dr. Johnson. Reverend Dr. Fredrick Johnson has years of experience in developing and leading nonprofit and charity organizations. With the focus on community development, his expertise in this area grew out of his first career of more than 20 years in the private sector working for multinational corporations. He is also a pastor with First Genesis Baptist Church in the city of Rochester. And we also have Ms. Marie Moy, and a little bit about her. She serves as the Director of Operations and is a member of the Restorative Practices Training and Implementation Team at Erie County Restorative Justice Coalition. ECRJC's mission is to promote racial and social justice through restorative practices, providing training, coaching, consulting, and restorative responses. Marie is a graduate of Northeastern Seminary of Roberts Wesleyan College in Rochester with a MA in theology and social justice, and of Indiana University, Bloomington, with a BS in biochemistry. Let's welcome them with a round of applause. And I believe Marie's going first.
To being up in front. When we train, we have all in a circle, and so I just want to take a moment to just breathe, partly for myself, partly from you. I hope you're in the right workshop, that you didn't get too wet coming from all the way over there. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Haudenosaunee people, who have been here since time immemorial. This is the land of the Cayuga people to the east and the Seneca people to the west. And we recognize that we were born into circles and acknowledge that the practices we strive for have been passed down to us by many indigenous groups. We honor the ancestors who have come before us, striving to promote peace and unity of the peoples of this earth. We recognize our relationships with each other and with this earth, without which we would not have the necessary means to sustain life. So I acknowledge that this may be new to you, that restorative practices might be a new thought to you, and I came a little bit, I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta backtrack. I was trying to get into all my slides about community development, but I need to backtrack a little bit about restorative practices. Restorative practices, really at a very tiny, my short elevator speech, just a couple floors, is about building positive relationships, both with yourself, with your creator, and with the people around you, starting with your family, your neighborhood, and your whole community. And we really believe that this basis is based on shared values that we have in common. I often, when I build centerpieces, we have some common values of love, respect, inclusivity, generosity, courage, trust, sharing, empathy, humility, and honesty. And they're held together by some community agreements, right? And one of which is respecting the talking piece, or respecting the person speaking. So many times when people talk out of order and talking over at one another, we're not hearing one another properly. That's where a lot of conflict comes from, right? That people are not, seen and heard for what they contribute to the community. And so we also want to speak with respect and listen with respect. We also want to come in with our own point of view, right? We're taking responsibility and accountability for our own speech and actions. We want to say that it's okay to pass. Sometimes you don't have more to contribute, and this is about having your choice and just respecting one another in the space. I'll tell you a little about Renovation Church and what I'm going to come from my perspective on community development. It's been planted about 15 years ago in Northwest Buffalo. It's in a more integrated part of the city. Buffalo is known for being highly segregated. There's a highway that literally divides our city in half between where the people who are African American live and the people who are white live. And more of the west side and coming up to the northwest side is a lot of refugee resettlement. So our neighborhood is about 30% Latino, which is predominantly from Puerto Rico, another 30 to 40% white, and then the rest of the 30% are a mixture of ethnicities, mostly due to resettlement. And so we were intentionally planted there as a Christian community development church to develop the neighborhood and look to resourcing the folks that live there with the things that they've been disenfranchised from, right? This is not, when we talk about food deserts, it's not a naturally occurring occurrence. It's literally food apartheid. We have intentionally moved away resources from certain areas of communities because they have the resources, and it just creates an ongoing cycle. So the church has gone through, like every church in all of our country, through this interesting cycle through COVID, where it's challenging. And I, well, it was a lot of numbers last night and very small type. I'm looking at my own. Okay, I think my type is a little bit bigger. I was like, I hope my type's not that small because I couldn't read any of the slides. But I appreciate that because we need it. You know, we are also like wanting to see where the trends are, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So Christian community development was come in almost 35 years ago now. With John Perkins and someone named Wayne Gordon and several other founders who were looking to see how they could resource neighborhoods. John Perkins, who is the most awesome, lovely person, and I'm so glad he stopped saying this might be my last year. He did that for like 5 years and it was making me crazy. But he's still here. Bible study tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. You can jump online and be in Bible study with John Perkins. And they started with both after school for kids and a health clinic, right? So Jericho Road, who's here, well, I've worked for them in the past as well. It had to do with like having access to not just emergency medical, but to health because of John's story and how his brother was shot and died because he had no access to health care, right? So these are the major components, and I'm just going to really touch on about 3 of these. And I really thought the connected for with last night too is if you were here, you heard Mark Matlock say that this alpha generation and this unchurched are watching to see if the church will respond to the needs in our community, right? They're looking to see if we're walking the walk and not just talking. So this first one is where my 2 worlds intersect, right? Is listening to community, and the biblical foundation comes from Exodus 3, where Moses was listening to his community and goes to the Pharaoh and says, I've heard the cries of my people. You need to let them go. He's fighting out against injustice. He identifies himself with the marginalized, even though he spent a large majority of his life living in luxury, right? And he centers the cause of the oppressed. And the other story is from Mark 10, where Jesus asks the blind beggar, what do you want me to do for you? He doesn't assume, he invites the man to participate in his own healing, right? He says, your faith has made you well. So listening to community really helps build relationships. And it reveals the assets and the needs. So where you listen to the people in your community, you hear, like, who knows how to cook, knows how to get around the neighborhood, knows who all the kids and where they belong, right? Who's taking care of whom. Also the needs. So instead of coming into a community and thinking that we know what people's needs are and assuming, we sit down and we listen. It allows everyone to be authentically heard and enables leaders to emerge, those ones who are coming with not just the needs, but also the solutions to the needs, right? We don't have to know everything. The answers come from community. It promotes equity, safety, trust, and ownership, right? It creates a kind of community where people know each other personally, so that builds trust, and so they can actually say what's on their hearts. When we first come into meetings, oftentimes, like, it's very surface. But when you get to know people, then they're willing to share. It also engages in cooperative decision-making. And just some of the benefits that we saw when we first did this, when we first planted, was that we heard from the neighborhood. They needed help with their kids' homework, right? The kids, the parents, and in Buffalo in particular, and Rochester is the same, in the city, have been disenfranchised from their education for decades, and they can't help their kids, right? So they needed a safe place for their kids to go so that they could just get help and some enrichment. Like I said, like she said, my first degree is in biochemistry. My spouse is a chemistry professor at UB, so just to do fun things in the summer and teach kids about science. We took kids to Grand Island, which doesn't seem very far to any of us, but they'd never been out of the city. They've never touched the water, right? And it just opens up their whole minds to what the possibilities could be, right? It was so funny. Before we went, the leader was like so worried that someone's going to drown, until we got there and all the kids are like, "Ooh, what's in the water?" It's like, well, there's plants. It's not a pool. So there was going to be no drowning because nobody was going to go nearly up to like their heads in this water, for sure. But also just like support groups, addiction support group. We had Running Strong for many years because people need to connect with other people who are sharing the same issues. Just creating space. So we heard earlier this morning, space for people to be authentic. We run marriage events. When I was part of our community center, which is part of our campus, just teaching people job skills, helping them with their resumes, maybe rehearsing a little bit before they go to an interview, just to help them have the confidence so that they could do, as well as, people are always looking for childcare. It's a big deal. I think they might do it here at this church. I know that at least they have a preschool. But people who want to work, they oftentimes don't because they don't have childcare. So it keeps them from like not only providing for their families, but also like growing in their own like development. The next part is about incarnation and reconciliation. And this whole model comes from Noel Castellanos. He wrote a book called Where the Cross Meets the Streets. And it's a really holistic picture of the gospel. That the gospel doesn't just stop with proclamation. Yes, we want people to know Jesus and have like an eternity, but we also know that people have needs here. And it's hard to think about eternity if I can't feed my kids today, right? That I'm not getting a good education. The kids are getting pushed out of school for things that are not suspendable. So we have to go on to meeting felt needs. And this is where there's a demonstration of compassion for people. That life is hard. And we heard about that too last night, about just needing, does the church care that I can't get a job? Does the church care that I'm in this cycle of addiction? Or I was just sat in Dr. Gerhardt's workshop. Does the church care that I'm struggling in my marriage, right? So we're also needing to address these felt needs. Community improvement, and just restoring and developing the area where people live so that they can flourish, so they don't have to go across town or take the bus to get groceries, so that they can walk safely in their neighborhood where there's not glass. They can walk, and then the systems change of confronting justice, right? Injustice is happening. And all of us, with the verse 2 Corinthians, we've all been called to be ministers of reconciliation in our neighborhoods to help those not just with the proclamation of God's word, but the incarnational gospel of what the word teaches us. And I love, especially I have to lift up the other passage that's up there is Isaiah 61, what Jesus read at his first teaching in Nazareth. And I could thank Dr. Middleton, which I'll see later. I didn't get to see him yesterday, but spent 3 semesters reading everybody's papers on this passage in Luke. But it speaks about us really coming to share the good news, the gospel. The gospel is not just that Jesus died, but gospel came to give good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim the freedom to the captives, to release from darkness for prisoners, and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. I'll move on. The next one I wanted to talk about was something about empowerment. And it's not to confuse people to say that people don't already have power. The people living in your neighborhoods, in our neighborhoods that have been disenfranchised, they have power. They have autonomy. You could start with Genesis 1, and that we've all been created in the image of God with inherent dignity and worth. Empowerment is more to mean that we're unlocking or opening the window. Sometimes there's too much grime on your window to see that you actually have the ability to make change in your own life, right? So we want to help people and by accompanying them, by walking with them, sharing what you know with people. It doesn't have to be something grand. It can be something small. Oh, I found out a way how to one of the programs that I ran was about tailoring. People need their clothes tailored, right? And just showing people how to fix hems and make a little side money so that they can make a little money, but also maybe work their other job. Learn a skill that they can be proud of. And encouragement, opportunities to just be that person who walks with people, and then also resources. So this little picture, and all these slides are in the Dropbox. So you, on your app, you can connect and open them up. Because I realize that this is always very small. But this is called a relationship window, and it's really kind of a change model that talks about, it's a graph. So it talks about from low to high on this vertical spectrum about our expectations for people. And then from low to high on our amount of support that we give people. So where we want to land is in that upper right-hand box where we have, reasonable expectations with an adequate amount of support to help people flourish and be fully human. It's where people are subjects to be honored and where they are being most fully humanly recognized. And that's where the shift is in the marriage for me between community development and restorative practices, is because where we see a lot of times, not just in our communities, but also in our churches, is a very punitive mindset, where we have very high expectations for people, but not enough supports to meet those expectations. You should be taking care of your kids. You should be making a job. You should be going to school. And folks just don't have enough supports to get there because, like I said, this is generations that have been failed by our school systems, by our communities, by our families, and by our churches. And, instead of sitting in shame and just saying, okay, I feel too, I don't know how to be responsible for that and sit in that not box with people where we don't have any expectations for them and we don't have any supports for them, we need to move ourselves. Because here we are, we sit here in this space, you're all able to get here by one reason or another, even as with a relationship with someone, that you have resources to share with other people, right? But we don't want to land in the 4 box, where we're just treating people as objects of need and doing everything for them. One of the people that I really admire, his name's Jonathan Brooks. He's now the pastor at Lawndale Community Church, and one of the foundations of CCD is like, don't do something for someone that they could do for themselves, right? And so when it comes to programs that we do, if people can pay, I expect them to pay, right? If they need help, I'd love to help them. But if they can pay, great, you're contributing and making a little bit of our fishes and loaves go further because you've contributed to that basket, right? So, just some examples that we've done with empowerment through Renovation Church is just teaching job and computer skills. A whole lab set up of computers, help people. The kids don't need much help learning. It's the adults, right? How to get some skills, learn some Microsoft so you can put that on your resume, to help you get a better job. Sharing our space. We have this whole campus that was formerly a Roman Catholic parish, and, we share. That's how my organization ended up there too. Like my partner in my organization and I are both elders on our church board, but we also met there and understood how to help our community through our church. And now our offices are there, as well as trying to monetize the whole building, because after COVID, it's expensive. Heat's expensive, man. We got to share that, right? And then by just supporting people, their talents. One of the most remarkable things that I don't think we really lift up that much is that Renovation Church in particular has really launched a lot of musical careers. We have seen a lot of people come and then become publishing artists because of their time, because we've invested in providing a lot of fancy musical equipment. You're welcome to come, so that they can be their best selves, right? So without much for a closing, I'll just say that I want to invite you to come. I asked Rebecca Taylor, I'm like, can I make a little plug? Come to Cincinnati, right? If you are interested in community development, if you want to learn more, besides Northeastern Seminary, CCD is my family. That's where I'm at home. And it's just going to be in Cincinnati, so it's definitely drivable. You don't have to fly across the country. And just really see how other people, other practitioners across the country are using these principles in their spaces. Thanks. And I will hand it over to Fred.
Good morning. It is still morning. We only have a few more minutes before it's afternoon, and then we'll be in the afternoon. Good day to you all. Good to see you. And it's my pleasure to be here. Marie Moore, you did an excellent job. And you did, amen. Didn't she do a good job? Wonderful. And she did such a good job. I said, there's some stuff on my slides that I'm not going to even show. But I'm going to show them anyway. And what I'm presenting here, I'm Dr. Fred Johnson, the senior pastor of the First Genesis Baptist Church here in the great city of Rochester, on the Crescent section of the city of Rochester, Northeast section, for those who are not familiar. And proud pastor there for just celebrated 15 years. And as well, professor here at Northeastern Seminary, director of field education. So I'm just grateful to be here with you. And I'm going to give you a model. I'm going to share with you what some of the things that we're doing at First Genesis specifically. and actually we call it doing ministry in the marketplace, and it's actually doing housing development in the city of Rochester. Let me give you just a quick background of where we're located. First Genesis is located in what we call the Crescent section of the city of Rochester, part of the city that has experienced disenfranchisement, de-investment, redlining, historical redlining. This is not just rumors, but it's documented redlining and lack of investment in the city of Rochester, particularly in the Crescent area. How do I know that there's disinvestment in the city? You can look at financial data across institutions, the city, and others. It will tell you of the investment that has not taken place in the city of Rochester, but has taken place in some of the suburban areas. So our church is located right in the Crescent area. We've been there for 49 years. We'll be celebrating 50 years next year. And we're greatly grateful for the fact that we've only had 2 pastors in those 49 years, for 33 years, and I've been there for 15, so some level of consistency. We are involved in what we call ministry in the community and the marketplace. And I'm going to describe what that is. First Genesis has, since I've been there the last 15 years, we have began to develop some plans in terms of doing economic development. And that means to build homes. That's been our thrust, because there is a section in the city of Rochester. Anybody ever been to the city of Rochester? Hudson Avenue, Upper Falls. If you like, I'll give you a tour now, and then we'll give you a tour once we build the 50 houses, what they look like. So that would be good. Hopefully we can take down the names of everyone. But right on the corner of Hudson and Upper Falls has been, for the past 30 years, has been empty lots for 30 years. And you can imagine what happens on empty lots for 30 years. What happens to the neighborhood, what happens to the property values. Some of you who live in Henrietta, who live in Palmyra, who live in wherever you might live, if you had an empty lot, what would you do? You would look for it to be invested, right? Somehow to utilize it. Well, this neighborhood has experienced disinvestment for 30 years, particularly on the corner of Hudson Avenue. The city of Rochester is even longer than that in terms of redlining. Anyone heard of the Inner Loop? It's a program of disinvestment, divide and conquer, right? So now there's a major effort to rebuild, if you will, or to build homes in the Inner Loop area. But this is what we've done. We have formed a non-for-profit called the First Genesis Development Corporation, and it is an arm of the church. It is directly related to the church, separate entity in all legal aspects and structure. And so the church continues to be the ecclesia, continues to be the church. We preach, teach, disciple, baptize, encourage, empower. That's the work of the church. And then we have the work of the Development Corporation, separate entity, its purpose is to do economic development. So the purpose in doing that is that you don't have a congruence and a difficulty in understanding what's the role of the church versus the role of the Development Corporation. We have partnered with the city of Rochester, major developers, and investors, and the state and the federal government. And this is really what I wanted to share of significance, to build 45 single-family homes. And let me just say this, single-family homes, not to rent. All right, let me say it one more time, somebody hear me. Not to rent, not rental properties, but home ownership by investors, by individuals who want to invest in the community. And I have shared with our leadership and so on that I'll be the first one to buy a house. I'm going to move from wherever I live at right now and relocate, as John Perkins says. One of the keys to community development is to have relocation for those who believe in a program to relocate and live there. But we're building 45 single-family homes, state-of-the-art, and these are the words we're not using this material. The houses will not be based on cardboard. Right? We're not putting cheap stuff in there. This is state-of-the-art, market-rate housing. And what is the purpose of doing that? The purpose is that it develops a sense of community. It develops a sense of responsibility, home ownership, and generational wealth. One of the biggest challenges that we have in the city of Rochester is, and I would suggest that if you improve the economic opportunity, you will improve the mindsets of many. Now, you heard me. I didn't say everybody, because evil is always present, right? Jesus said, evil is always going to be present, right? You're going to need some kind of corrective action. But I believe that if you build homes, you provide employment, it improves the educational systems, and when you have the opportunity for people to work, you've worked all day, that when you get off work, you don't have time to do anything else but to sit down, eat dinner, and get ready for tomorrow's job, right? And so these homes are what we call anchor. They're going to be the anchor for a revitalization of the community. And the book of Jeremiah talks, Jeremiah 29, I believe it says, talks about building houses, building homes, building community, building a sense of belonging. And when you begin to develop those kind of aspects, some of the challenges I believe that we have in some of our cities, in Rochester and in Buffalo. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. And some of the things that have changed in Brooklyn, New York is because economics has begun to, finance, has begun to flow into the community, and that begins to give people a different perspective. So what are the three key things that we should do? And I had a PowerPoint, but I decided not to use it. So what I'm talking about is available on the PowerPoint, and I have some copies up here as well. It's about 17 pages, and it probably would have taken me about 35 minutes to go through it. So you can get a copy here, or in the it could be provided later. But the three key aspects of this development has been partnership. Partnership. You have to partner, not just with anybody, right? Not just because there are many people who wanted to partner with us, but they may not have had the same values that we had. And so you have to be willing to partner, and you have to be patient. This is a long process. As it was shared in terms of building the homes, is a long process. And it was shared earlier that I was in corporate world for 20 years, and I often joke in some of our meetings with the city and state and so on. I said, when I was working in the private sector, if it had taken me this long to get a project done, they'd have showed me the door. Right? And so we have been going through this process for the past 5 years, methodically working through plans, designs, the pandemic, change in leadership at city, state, and national, COVID. It takes time and so you have to be patient. So first thing is partnership, right? Be willing to partner. The second is to have some level of patience. And then the third is, and this is real key, partnership and patience is important, but this is very important as well, have a level of professionalism. Then you need to ensure that you have the right people at the table. We have, when we were going through this process, there were many people who were, who wanted to get involved and who had energy, and we had to ensure that we utilized everybody, but that the gifting, where you would be positioned would be determined based on your gift. And so the gift will position people, if you will, so if we needed an accountant, I'm not just going to grab someone who said, well, I did accounting, a couple of years ago, for a couple of years, I took an accounting class, right? And that's good. Those are good things. I'm not suggesting it's not. But we need a CPA. So we went out and got a CPA. We got an attorney who's an expert in real estate development. Our board is made up of community and people who have expertise in particular areas. So you want to have a level of professionalism that shows that we're doing things the right way, if you will. So if you have good partners, You got to choose your partner. Choose them well, with same values, who have the same perspective in terms of, and this is real important, and I don't know if I should say this. Oh, well, I'll say it anyway. Sound like what I say on Sunday in the pool. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. But this is the thing. In urban areas, people are looking for people to help. Okay, I'm going to expand on that. We're looking for people, and it doesn't matter if they're black or white. All right, let me unpack that a little bit more. It doesn't matter if they live in the city or in the suburbs. The key element that's important is that there is a passion for righteousness. That's what's key. And of course, and I know many have heard this word, you don't want to come with the savior mentality, right? A savior mentality is, I know how to do it, I'm helping you, and you ought to be glad that I'm helping you, right? That's not what is desired, but rather I want to engage in and be partner with you because I see the value, and this is a plan from God. This effort that we're doing is not social work, it's kingdom work. The work we're doing is not to be another social club. ABC does what they do it very well. Other Urban League does the work they do very well. What we're doing is God's work in the community. We're doing God's work in the community to transform lives and to build generational wealth. Yeah, I said that, generational wealth. The American dream has not changed. It starts for anybody with home ownership. And then it is able to bridge and develop from there. All right? So we are, that plan, we have, we're building 45 single-family homes. We're building a 95-unit senior complex right on Hudson Avenue. Anybody ever been to Cornhill? Anybody know Cornhill? Cornhill, in the Cornhill area. I've labeled this project and shared it with a few folks for the city that this is going to be Cornhill on Hudson Avenue. Yeah. I remember Cornhill about 30, 40 years ago, and it's different than it is now, right? But it's going to be Cornhill on Hudson. And one of my community residents said, Pastor, wait a minute, Pastor, what do you mean? It's not going to be Cornhill on Hudson Avenue. I said, why? They said, because of gentrification. I said, we're not going to have gentrification. Then the question was, how are you going to ensure that? We have already started to prepare people who are interested in being homeowners, who may not be mortgage ready, right? To take them through a process so that they get their credit rate, they get their deposit down, they get training on how to maintain a home. And so, of course, you can't target a particular people and say, okay, this is for you. That's not, that shouldn't be the American way, right? Yeah. But rather what we're doing is preparing people so that they will have the option and be prepared to be homeowners. And what will the result be? God will get the glory. Families will change. Communities will be strengthened. I believe crime will decline. And there will be, and maybe this is not directly connected to this presentation, but there will be a demand on the educational system. And when I say demand is, educational systems change by how involved you are. Parents. As parents, if you put a demand of excellence, that's what you'll get. So when you develop families that are ready to be part of this home ownership, it changes the generation, I believe. And so we are excited about this endeavor. We will be, and I do see Daisy here, and so Daisy, I'm going to be, this is a prophetic word here, right? Daisy's right here for the city of Rochester. And we've been working with her on a few S. We are claiming that in the first quarter of 2024, we're going to break ground. That's what. And the designs are already done. The financing is it's always difficult to work, right, Pastor Betty, to work through the financing in this economy as well. But we're nailing it down and partnering with some people. And so you will absolutely, and hopefully I can give a tour to any and everyone who would who want to check it out now, and then check it out when it's done in a couple of years. This is God's work. I'm done now. This is God's work that we're doing at First Genesis Baptist Church. Other churches in other cities have done it extremely well. I know Elam has done it in Buffalo and other cities as well. We're trying to model how it should be done in the 21st century. As I shared, I have handouts. You can get a copy, you can get it off online, or if you're interested in someone providing, this is called advertising. If you're interested in anyone coming to your church or ministry to help you through that process, let me know. We provide those kind of accommodations as well for those who met. This model is appropriate not just in urban areas. This is it is duplicative, if you will, or you can repeat it in areas that are urban and suburban areas as well. I'm going to open it up for questions. Is that all right? All right. For me and Maria, any questions? Yes. Yeah. 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 Sure. Legally, you cannot say they're designated for a certain segment of people, or certain ethnicity. What you can do is say that it's a certain income bracket. And so there is an income requirement, if you will, for those who are in a certain area of economics. And that helps to diminish the opportunity for gentrification, if you will. And so the target begins or becomes the people who are part of that community. Second question? Thank you. That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that, and I'll share this. The city has requirements relative to MBE kind of designations, but every partner we met with, the construction company, the design company, I met with them personally, so this wasn't a third-party conversation. I met with them personally and said, the expectation is that if we are partnering, that you're going to hire people that from the community who look like me, who can do the work. And I said, and I just want you to know, one of my board members is a forensic accountant. So, anybody know what a forensic accountant does? And so he will be looking at the data to make sure that it lines up with what we expect, right? And so you have to intentionally have those conversations. That's why I mentioned about values. So important, that you have some level of understanding that there's a commitment, and the contractor who is doing by the block, and I won't name the company right now, has committed. He's hired over 40% of his workers are from the community, right in the city of Rochester. And so it changes the dynamics so that we are building community with people who live in the community. Yeah, Marie. Pastor Bell, and then this job. This might be for you. Yeah, very good question, Pastor Bell. I think what's critical and what we've discussed as a board is this idea that there are many people in the community who are able to pay, but the availability of quality homes is not there. And then there are people who are outside, who are disenfranchised, who are underemployed, right? Who need to be lifted to employment. That's the market that we're looking for. That's why we want the contractor to hire the people from the community. They develop the skills and the acumen to do construction, right? And then have the employment to purchase the homes. Right? And so part of the biggest challenge for some people across this country is, well, I'm originally from New York City, from Brooklyn, New York. And there's a lot of building going in New York City, right? I'm going to come back to your question, Pastor Bell. And homes are tripling in value. Right? And people who live in Brooklyn who can't afford the astronomical, by the way, actually I know this because my son lives in Park Slope. He graduated from college and got a job in New York City. He lives in Park Slope, and I won't tell you what the rent is. It's absolutely ridiculous. But my point is that what we have to do is, and even New York City is trying to do this, is to begin to put income requirements such that you build a community of, you have the wealthy, the middle class, and the working class living in community. So in the old world, we would call that set-asides, but it's, and I know some folks don't like to hear that word, but there has always been in the American system rules and policies around set-asides. And it's about building community, right? It's about building a community of diverse and of diverse people. This gentleman here, and then go to Pastor Betty.
My question is related to this one. People pay in rent 50% more, 60% more than they can pay for the mortgage. So the money could be there, but how do you help them to save for the mortgage, for the down payment?
Daisy, you want? She's from the city. She can help me with that.
Yes, so the city has a first-time homebuyer program. We give at least $6,000. If the employer, like let's say Strong Memorial, who is part of our first-time homebuyer program, they add another $3,000, that's $9,000 that you get to close on a property. So we do try to provide the closing costs because that is true. Some people don't have the savings account for that. So they do get a grant to get the closing costs going. And there's other subsidies that some banks actually add even more.
And that's what we call a righteous policy. So let me give an example, and I know Pastor Betty, we're gonna let you comment. But for many of us, we have family members. Our dad, our mom, our family members can give us $6,000 as a down payment, right? And there are some people who, because of disenfranchisement, unemployment, redlining, their families may not have $6,000 to give to buy a home. But in the righteousness of God, doesn't it seem equitable to give those who have been, in some respects, disenfranchised an opportunity to lift themselves up? So it doesn't become a handout, it becomes an uplift. Right? All right. Pastor Betty. Thank you for saying that. We've had several instances, Pastor Betty, where we've had veterans who've come across hard times and weren't aware of the benefits that all Americans, if you serve the country, right, you have those benefits of 0% down or what, I mean, just astronomical, and they deserve it. They deserve every part of it. And so what we've been doing is working with people, trying to get a profile of who they are to see where they fit. Because there are many veterans who served in the Marines and the Army and so on, who may be going through mental challenges and mental struggles and so on, PTS, or I'm not sure what it's called, but the experience after serving, some of the impact of that, and who need assistance to be linked into that. So we've done intentionally said let's see if we can do anything to connect people who have been who served our country. Questions? Anything for Maria as well? Yes. We're probably gonna have to give you the mic back there. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. What we have been trying to do is to really And we have relationships with those who the contractor has developed. We have asked the contractor that they're not just looking for a paycheck, they're looking for certifications. So as they go through this process, OSHA, HVAC, the different certifications, so this is not just about getting a paycheck on a weekly paycheck or biweekly paycheck. It's about developing skills such that, and particularly in the construction industry, certifications are key, right? And so from that, people can then be springboarded to entrepreneurial opportunities, developing their own businesses. So it's not just about employment, it's about building skill sets and tools so that you can not only do the job there, but also be able to do entrepreneurial things in terms of a career. Pastor Marlowe? Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Nope. All right. Well, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's what I wrought. So I do have a handout, and this is just, we call it building the right circle. I use this in training all the time. But it helps walk through how you have a community meeting, right? That's not like your traditional like this. This is really intimidating to people in your community who are not churched or not familiar with church. Having a space where everybody sits, having a little food is good. People like food. We'll come for that. And just leading through some questions, starting off with something easy, something that's not intimidating, like, like, what's your favorite, I don't know, wing sauce? I don't know. That could be controversial, but, and then getting into deeper, right? And really listening. It often takes more than once. And what I put on here too is like, just with your guiding round, starting with something anchor. What do you like about living here? Giving people something in common to talk about what I've always lived here. It's familiar to me. We played on these streets. Things that people have in common. Then maybe some of that critique. And I'm just thinking of Walter Brueggemann. So what's challenging here? But also landing on it something that's energizing, inviting the people that live there to have the solutions. They've thought about it. They don't always have the resources to do anything about it, right? So that's where I like what he's saying and what you were alluding to, like we need to have need to have more mix, right? Not just mixed income, but mixed educational level, mixed ethnicity, people having more ideas. It just creates this energy that we didn't necessarily have and get stuck out of the rut to get us out of that ditch we're in, because people have the creativity, but sometimes they've lost the hope, right? So by building relationships, having a little food, church do food good, right? And having just like some time to sit down and not necessarily go to the needs first, but going to like, what's good? What do you like about this? Thinking about the assets. And then what does people have to contribute to getting to where we want to be and being the best community, starting with us, being the best that I can be, but also being the best community that we could be together. Sure. Do you have training for all the time. So how do we get information about how to training? Sure. So like I said, it seems, the acronym seems weird, and it takes a minute to remember, but it's Erie County, which I'm trying to drop because we're across the state now, but Restorative Justice Coalition, ecrjc.org. We do training. We're doing less virtual training, but I think I want to incorporate that back again. During COVID, I had to switch everything virtual, and then we got to a place where we want to meet people. But we do community trainings. We do a lot of trainings in schools. Our organization is now training the 2 residentials that are nearest us in Rush and Auburn for youth, as well as the Erie County Youth Secure Center, just to help shift our minds from being punitive. Like we're being crushed. We're crushing ourselves. We're crushing our own children by having such high expectations and not having enough supports to meet those expectations, right? So I also have a few programs that I've gotten funding from the state and from a local organization that if we really want to get these skills in the hands of community members that don't necessarily have the funds to come. So I have a couple different grants where people could come, not only come to get trained, but also get stipend to come to training. Because it costs you away from your job, it costs you transportation, that type of thing. There's really, we can't facilitate everything. We really want people to be able to like facilitate and work through issues in their own neighborhoods, right? Because if you had just a little shift in a language, a way to have a circle where everybody's heard, then you can settle your own problems so it doesn't escalate. You're not calling the police. You can go to your neighbor and say, I noticed the music's kind of loud, so what's happening? You know, how can we make things right between us? So our time's about up, but we have lunch, so I'm sure if people want to talk to Fred. Absolutely.
I do have handouts for those who want a printed copy of what I didn't put on the screen, but what I talked about is in the back there. So help yourself, or you can either ask me or Maria. If you have any questions, we'll be up here for a few moments. Thank you so much.